Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 250th installment in the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Vayigash. Parshas Vayigash, where Yehuda pleads for his family, his brothers. And finally, Yosef says, I'm Yosef, my father's still alive. Right? The reconciliation of Yosef and the brothers. And Pharaoh joins in the welcome. His brother sends him off. And Yaakov comes down to Egypt. Right, goes to the lineage of who he brings down with him to Egypt. And all that. So the Torah tells me, book of Genesis chapter 47 verse 9. And Pharaoh meets Yaakov. And Pharaoh says, and let's say in verse 7. Start from verse 7. It says, and Yosef brought Jacob, his father, presented him to Pharaoh. And Yaakov blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Yaakov, how many of the days of the years of your life? And in verse 9, Yaakov answered Pharaoh, the days of my years, my sojourns have been 130. Few and bad have been the days of the years of my life. I've not reached the life spans of my forefathers, days of their sojourns. A little bit hard to understand. First of all, why does Pharaoh ask him how old he is? Right, that's the first question. And the second question is, why are they bad? Why are all his years considered bad? What about all the goodness God does for all of us on a regular basis, gives us food, takes care of our needs? You're right. He went through a lot of trials. What about all the goodness? It's a lot of goodness. So first question, Pharaoh asks, how old are you? Because first time, during that time, even though people lived longer lives, he looked really old. And people didn't look really old. They didn't look really old at that time. It started after that. Right? So Pharaoh asked them, how old are you? A little bit strange. However old you are, nobody looks that old. Right? Nobody looks that old. So that's one of the first answers. Second answer, or a second question, is why does he say my days are evil, or some of my days were evil, the days of my life. Right, sorry, let's say better. My days were short and evil. What about the goodness? Seemingly complained. So says Mori Rebbe, Arav Agon of Moshe Stormach should be well. Brings down in Chochmah V'das. It's commentary on Chumash. And he says like this. He says the righteous don't count their days. They don't count their years. Why? Because the reality is they don't do what they need to do. Meaning that their lives, their times, their days, their years are much shorter. Our forefathers lived much longer. Yitzhak lived longer. Avram lived longer. Right? So his numbers, the days, the years, were shorter. So Yaakov says in his humility that his years were not complete. His years were a few years. And they were also bad. They're also evil. Why? Because he suffered. He suffered a lot. He suffered from his brother, Esav. Suffered with Lavan. Suffered with Dinah. Suffered with Yosef. The story with the brothers. He suffered. Tremendous amounts. Right? But he says by his forefathers, that was different. Because they fulfilled longer days. They had more of an opportunity. They were given longer life. So he himself, in the years he was allotted until today, what they got, he didn't have the same. Not to mention all the suffering. So you can look at it one of two ways. Or maybe multiple ways. Right? The ultimate pessimist would say, he's ungrateful. What it seems. Simple explanation. He seems like an ingrate. My days are short. My days are evil. Not all his days were bad. He had good days. I understand. He suffered. And suffering can play a major factor in a person's life. Whether it be health, or it's financial. People can suffer many different ways. Some people take on the challenge. And they'll say the suffering they went through, whatever it was, made them who they are. And it did. Didn't mean they had, every day was good. They had good days, they had bad days. Right, whatever it was. But they persevered. Made them exactly who they are today. Formed them. At the same time, a person can look at the opposite. A person can say, you're right, I suffered. Went through a lot of misfortune. Woe to me. Woe to my family. Woe to everybody. Can't wait to die. That was pretty bad. Pretty morbid way of looking at things. But a person can get so beaten down in life, that's the way to look at it. Just counting the days till they die. Now, there could be people that are very good in this world. And then in the end, they're ready to die. They don't want to go through miraculous things and different treatments and whatever. So that'd be the pessimistic way of looking. And saying Yaakov's ungrateful. It's as if to say he never had any good. That's another way to look at it. Probably multiple ways. What's another way of looking at it? That in his humility, Yaakov says, I didn't get what my father and my grandfather had. I didn't get the longer years. I wasn't able to fulfill what I needed to fulfill. That was taken away. You're right, he suffered, went through other things, fine. But the reality is he didn't get as much time. So why is he saying it's bad? Sorry that the time is short. Because he didn't do what he could have. He wasn't given enough time. He didn't get what his father's grandfather got. Years were taken off. But you're right, he also suffered. But see, Yaakov made a decision. Yaakov's decision was that he wanted to be judged according to strict justice. Just like Rabbi Akiva also. And that's why a minute, very small transgression at his level, very, very severe. But isn't that what he wanted? Isn't that the challenge he was up to? But I would say, and it's hard for me to say, but I would say that's what you wanted. You wanted to be at the top of the curve. You wanted to be the one to reach or try and reach the highest level with the least room for infraction. That's why Yaakov says, God promised me to take care of me when I go against Esav. God says, I'll take care of you. And he asks him again. God already promised. Commentaries ask, what's he asking again for? He's asking us maybe he'll sin. Maybe some small sin will take away the protection. But he's got no room for error. No room for error. So we could say, you're right, he suffered. Many, many things he suffered. But he became who he became. All the sons are righteous. They make who the Jewish people are. So through that, good things came out. At the same time, he suffered. But he wanted to live to a higher standard. A much higher standard. So part of me would say, and again, it's probably not right to say, but part of me would say, isn't it true that's what he asked for? If that's what he asked for, I want to get judged up until a hair's breadth, then how can he say it was bad? Saying it's bad or it's evil sounds like a complaint. But if that's what he asked for, that's what he wanted to live for, what's he complaining about? He's got no reason to complain. None. For whatever minor things he might have done, that God got angry. Those are the consequences. When you're very, very close to the king, there is no room for error. King could chop your head off. By someone else, minor discretion, no big deal. But you're next to the king. You're very close to the king. Very, very close. A minor infraction could suffer like you can't imagine. Person will say it's not fair. Life's not, let's remember, life's not about being fair or not. The closer you are to the king, the more the price you have to pay. That's the bottom line. The more we're going to have to pay. If I'm not so close to the king, I'm also going to pay. Just won't pay as much. Right? The penalty will be less. Depending on what you've done. Some things you can't get around. But it doesn't matter what you know or you don't know. Desecration of Shabbos, status of a non-Jew, Yeah, certain things you can't change. No matter what you know or don't know. But if you're close to the king, you're very, very close to the king. So you can't have it both ways. You got to take your lumps also. So again, far from me to say, someone else on a much lower level would do the same thing and complain. Say, what do you want? You put yourself in that situation. That's what you decided to do. No one asked you to do it. No one asked you to sign up. But you decide to do it on yourself. And now all of a sudden you come back and say, hey, it's not fair. These days were bad. What do you mean they were bad? You signed up for that. Someone who signs up to be a Navy SEAL. And the punishment, the hardship, the grueling preparation to be a Navy SEAL, not easy by any stretch. Then you sit there and complain. When it's all said and done, you gave everything you had, with your body and whatnot. And say, oh, my body aches. This hurts. Something else happened, But you signed up for that. So what's the simple answer? The simple answer is, you're right. That's what he signed up for. You're right. He had a lot of suffering. But suffering made him who he is. Suffering, it was the glue that held the Jewish people together throughout the generations. Made us who we are. No pain, no gain. But see, he didn't get to do 100% what he wanted to do. He had 14 years sit and learn in the yeshiva Shem Ve'ever. He had to run away from his brother. Didn't see his father for many years. There were heavy prices to pay. And when a person suffers, how do we view it? We don't view it as, look how much I grew from this. Some people. Why not? Because when a person suffers, they don't want it. They pray, God, take it away. That's what we pray for. But we pray every day. Don't bring me to trials and tribulations. But without trials and tribulations, we don't grow. Can't have it both ways. And if we knew how much suffering in this world, not that we're masochists, but if we knew how much suffering in this world atoned for our sins, so we can be much cleaner in the next world without suffering, or major suffering. Tremendous! How many people are willing to sign up for it? I don't think too many. Because we don't want to suffer. We don't want to go through difficulty. Right? Even if it doesn't affect anyone else, it just affects us. Sickness, let's say. Okay, it'll affect other people around you. But the reality is, it's only your body suffering. Other people may be suffering other ways, fine. Anyone willing to sign up for that? Anybody say, well, I relish to be a paraplegic Want to know what it feels like? Not to be able to walk? And it's going to take away 1 million of my sins? Anyone want to sign up? I don't know, who wants to have their legs cut off? But look at the benefits! Look at the future benefits! Even if we would see how high our position would be in Gan Eden. Even if we can see in the next world where we're going to be. And what high lofty position we'll have. Anyone want their legs cut off? I don't think so. Because we'll be convinced, okay, this, that. I need my legs. Whatever reason. Could say we don't have enough Amunah, whatever. A lot to talk about that. But I don't know too many people willing to sign up. Even if God would reveal himself right now. And God would show his portion of the world to come. And say you got nothing to worry about. And then, I don't know. I don't know how many people are gonna sign up. Now, there's one other aspect here. Targum Yonasan says, what was the evil that he felt? He didn't live in Israel. He's always wandering outside of Israel. He lived outside of Israel. But he felt it. He felt the pain. That was living outside the land. He said that was worse than everything else. The love for living in the land. Worse than what happened to Yosef. Worse than fighting with Esau. Worse than Dinah. What happened to her? Because he understood one fundamental point. And the fundamental point is the holiness of Eretz Israel, of the land of Israel, is greater than anywhere else in the world. Spiritually, nothing to talk about. Not saying it's an easy place to live. Talmud says one of the 3 most difficult things to acquire, right? Eretz Israel, Torah, and Olam Haba. Right? Portion of the next world. Because living in the land is a whole different thing. You're obligated at a much higher level. I'm not saying you're not obligated outside the land. It's not the same. But you're living in the palace of the king. So he had the pain. And he felt the pain that he wasn't able to live in the palace of the king. And that's why he mentioned it to Pharaoh. Right, according to Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel. What was the evil? Couldn't live in the land. Worse than any other evil. They're going to say, well, maybe Yaakov Avinu is the first Zionist. Maybe. He's talking about the holiness of the land. Not what we have today. We have today, okay, there's holiness in the land, no question. But it's certainly not run by holy Jews. That's for sure not. But it's different than any other place. Anyone who's ever visited knows that. There's a higher standard there. And there should be. Right? Because you have great forces trying to fight against it. Just like you have the greatest amount of holiness. To offset it, you need the greatest amount of impurity. Right? The inclination has to fight that much harder. But that was his greatest pain. Right? Not that all he suffered and he signed up for it and all that. No. The greatest pain was not being in the land. Now, anyone who's ever lived in the land knows the pain of not being there. Person never lived in the land, they don't know. They don't know what it is. They don't know what it is to experience. Again, not an easy place to live. For many different reasons. But says Targum Yonasan, Rabbi Yonasan ben Uziel, Out of all the tests that he had, that was the most difficult. Because he felt the pain of not living in the palace of the king. So, Rebbe's father, blessed memory, would say, better a Jew outside the land of Israel that has a very strong desire to live in the land, rather than a Jew in the land of Israel wanting to live outside the land. Right? If you're in the land, doesn't matter how hard it is, you got a merit to live in the land. Huge merit. And you think you're missing things outside the land? You're missing like another hole in your head. What are you missing? Right? Better for a Jew outside the land to want to live there, but they can't for whatever reason, than a Jew who lives in the land thinking I'm missing something outside. Right? Major, major difference. I want to remind everyone, give a class on duties of the heart every Tuesday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, in the gate of self-accounting. Every Sunday, and back this Sunday, we're going to start Book of Leviticus, chapter 15, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 4 o'clock Israel time. Then we're going to have Tanakh Talk at 12:30 Eastern time, 7:30 Israel time. And No Hide class for No Hide Nations. That's going to be 2:30 Eastern time, 9:30 Israel time, Pack Day on Sunday. Tuesday and Thursdays, we have 2 Q&As. All right, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Saturday is Pirkei Avos, 2 o'clock Eastern time, 9 o'clock Israel time. I also have conversion classes. Anyone interested in any of these can find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. Or you can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBIChaimCoffman @gmail.com.